I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. A group of 5 more special grand jurors from the Fulton County Special Grand Jury that criminally investigated Donald Trump are speaking to the media. This group is speaking to the media anonymously, unlike the 4-person Emily Kohrs, who previously gave a number of interviews, which we covered here on the MeidasTouch Network. And this group of 5 grand jurors spoke exclusively to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the local Atlanta media organization that does an incredible job reporting. Special shout out to the authors at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Tamar Hallerman and Bill Rankin, for their great reporting. You can read their whole report by going to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I want to talk about some of the bombshells from this report. So the authors spoke to these special grand jurors in private. Their names remain secret to protect their anonymity, and they said some really important things that I want to share about their experience on the grand jury, the special grand jury that criminally investigated Donald Trump, prepared a report for the Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. Small portions of that have been unsealed, but the key portions remain sealed. And according to one of the special grand jurors who spoke to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, quote, "It's gonna be massive. It's going to be massive." This is what the juror said to the authors, quote, "A lot's going to come out sooner or later, and it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive." And another juror said, quote, "I tell my wife, if every person in America knew every single word of information we knew, this country would not be divided as it is right now." And the special grand jurors who spoke with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution did not reveal who were the subjects of their recommendations to be criminally indicted. But a lot of the information, reading the tea leaves here, reading between the lines, I think makes it very clear that they believe that Donald Trump engaged in criminal conduct. It seems very, very likely that Donald Trump is the individual among numerous other individuals who are going to be criminally indicted. Here's just another gem that I want to share with you from the outset. Then let's just go through some more of the statements that these grand jurors made in this exclusive interview with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. According to the grand jurors, Senator Lindsey Graham, when he testified, stated, quote, he said that during that time, right after the 2020 election when Donald Trump lost, quote, "If somebody had told Trump that aliens came down and stole Trump ballots, that Trump would have believed it." It was actual testimony that Lindsey Graham gave to the special grand jury. So now let's go through some of the interviews that were given by 5 of these 23 special grand jurors who recounted what it was like to be a pivotal but anonymous part of one of the most significant criminal investigations in United States history. Quote, so one of the jurors told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, quote, "One of the most important things will be a part of in our life was the 8-month process that we did. It was incredibly important to get it right." They also spoke, the grand jurors spoke about how they heard a recording of a phone call that Donald Trump placed to the late Georgia House Speaker, David Ralston, in which Donald Trump asked the fellow Republican Ralston to convene a special session of the legislature to overturn Joe Biden's victory in Georgia. One of the jurors said that Ralston proved to be, quote, "an amazing politician," and here's why. The speaker, referring to Ralston again, who's a Republican who spoke with Trump, quote, "basically cut the president off. He said, 'I will do everything in my power that I think is appropriate.' He just basically took the wind out of Trump's sails," the juror said. "Well, thank you, is all the president could say." And Ralston and other legislative leaders never actually called a special session. So here again, the fact that the special grand jurors were very complimentary of Ralston shutting Trump down in this fashion also shows to you what their view and perspective of Donald Trump is. One of the other, in terms of process here, that the special grand jurors explained to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution is that the DA's office gave each juror a binder, which quickly grew swollen with notes. They rarely had advance notice of who would be testifying. Instead, they would file in a little before 9 a.m., taking their usual seats in 3 rows of chairs, which had been arranged in a large conference room, and be handed a piece of paper with the name and photo of the day's witness. One of the jurors described how the 75 witnesses they heard from or were told about fell into 3 buckets. The first set, who they questioned early on, were generally forthcoming. The second was witnesses who needed to receive subpoenas but were willing to talk. The third was people who clearly did not want to be there and had fought their summons. They were the last witnesses jurors heard from, and many had at least at one point been close to Trump. That should also tell you how the jurors thought of Donald Trump. Quote, "It was like night and day when the second group finished and we got to the third," one of the grand jurors told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Quote, "The tone in the room completely changed, like overnight." One of the things that the grand jurors said was that among the most compelling witnesses to them were Fulton County poll workers Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss, who received death threats after being singled out by Donald Trump, and Rudy Giuliani and defamed. Another mentioned Eric Coomer, the one-time executive for Dominion Voting Systems, who left his job after being vilified. They also mentioned Tricia Raffensperger, the wife of Secretary Brad Raffensperger, who broke down when describing the vitriol and threats that she received as a result of Donald Trump spreading disinformation and attacking Brad Raffensperger. So again, this should show you what the special grand jurors think about Donald Trump. Quote, this is what a juror said, quote, "I was pretty emotional throughout the whole thing. I wouldn't cry in front of any of the witnesses, but when I would get in my car, I was like, I just left that and I have to just go do my job now. I just know things are hard to know." One of the other things is that some of the witnesses took the Fifth Amendment or invoked their Fifth Amendment. And this is what a grand juror said about some of the witnesses who invoked their Fifth Amendment rights, like Mark Meadows and Rudy Giuliani, who invoked in certain questions. Quote, "When people would take the Fifth over and over, we would kind of go, ugh," one juror said. "Not because we were like, oh my gosh, you're guilty, whatever. It was like, we're going to be here all day." And 2 of the jurors estimated that as many as 10 witnesses invoked their Fifth Amendment rights, some doing so even when asked to describe such basic questions of their education. And we know from the prior interviews that Emily Kohrs, the foreperson, gave that Meadows and Giuliani invoked the Fifth. Meadows, I think, invoked the Fifth throughout the time, and Giuliani refused to answer some questions, or both didn't answer all of the questions. And then, going back to what I said at the outset, some of the jurors said that, look, a lot's going to come out sooner or later, and it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive. Several of the jurors told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that they were honored to be a small part of history, but were glad that it was anonymous. One juror expressed appreciation for the behind-the-scenes look the group received of Georgia politics. Another indicated he had grown more jaded after it became clear that some witnesses were telling the grand jury one thing about the election under oath and then casting doubt on the system when they returned to the campaign trail sometimes an hour later. So think about that also to give you a perspective on how this special grand jury felt. So when they say their findings are going to be massive, and when they say things like, I tell my wife, if every person in America knew every single word of information we knew, this country would not be divided as it is right now. Then you basically look at what the grand jurors are also saying here, where they're saying that they grew jaded, where a witness would say one thing under oath and then lie on the campaign trail to then spread the big lie when they weren't under oath and they weren't in a court of law. And then finally, the group said that they had no idea what Fani Willis planned to do in response to their recommendation. but many described an increased regard for the election system and the people who run it. I mean, one person said, look, I can honestly give a damn whoever goes to jail, like personally. I care more about there being respect in the system for the work that people do to make sure elections are free and fair. And the grand jurors said they understand why the public release of their full and final report needs to wait until Willis makes indictment decisions. So a very, very, very powerful report, again, by Bill Rankin and Tamar Hallerman, who got this scoop for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. You can check out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and read the full report, but those were the highlights. And I just want to generally say the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has done really good work generally in reporting the events, local events that have happened in Atlanta, especially election related, and making sure to protect our democracy and, of course, always expose the lies and disinformation out there. And wish there was a lot more local papers and local media that did the same hard work the Atlanta Journal-Constitution does each and every day. And hopefully this report gave justice to the hard work that those writers and reporters do as well. It's important to me. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We are on our way to 1 million subscribers here at the MeidasTouch Network. Help us march to 1 million subscribers in the month of March by hitting subscribe on the YouTube channel. It's free to subscribe, so please hit subscribe. Also, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Wherever you get your audio podcast as well, just search MeidasTouch Podcast and subscribe for audio. It's free to subscribe there. It's free to subscribe on YouTube. You can also go to patreon.com if you want to become a member there. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas. Thanks for watching.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the Unapologetically Pro-Democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs, It Wasn't Rigged, You're Just a Loser, at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.